Alright everyone, the US is withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. This is a good thing because if climate change is real and anthropogenic, there is nothing that we can do about it short of sterilizing the entire third world. I'm going to weigh in here with my own thoughts. The Western world is no longer responsible for the problems associated with climate change, whether natural or anthropogenic. You're talking about Africa and China primarily, increasingly being responsible for that. You would need to take care of that situation. Look, the real problem is this. If you look at the United States today, large areas that were deforested 100 years ago are reforested now. The forests here in New England are not virgin. There's almost no old growth forest in the entire region of the United States. Almost all of it is gone. What little remained were in little patches, essentially, little tiny groves. You can still see the occasional very, very fat, interesting old tree that's still alive from a few hundred years ago. The rest is recent growth. That's because the United States actually cares about the environment. Meanwhile, you look at Africa, the Congolese rainforest is continuing to be deforested. You look at the Amazon basin, Brazil protected a big swath of it. Nobody else seems to care. Maybe the Peruvians do. You look at Indonesia, the entire island of Borneo practically has been deforested now. Those are your siphons of CO2. Those and the oceans of the world. Meanwhile, other countries are the ones still dumping a bunch of toxic waste into the ocean. China does it. India does it. We don't really do it. We're squeaky clean compared to these countries. You're talking just about CO2 emissions, but you're not addressing what takes care of some of those emissions, what reabsorbs CO2. It's forests and it's a bunch of fucking plankton in the oceans. So you go ahead and protect them, you probably don't have a problem. You know what will happen? As CO2 levels rise, those plants and that plankton will explode with growth and they'll reabsorb it. But they can't do that if people keep deforesting the rainforests. They can't do so if the oceans are polluted and poisoned so that some of that plankton never grows. There's your problem. But nobody at the UN is going to be serious about it and tell you that that's the actual problem. They'd rather focus on, we'll throw money at the situation, we'll build more solar panels. That'll solve the problem. No, it won't. It won't solve it at all. China alone creates more CO2 than the whole world did in the 1800s when climate change supposedly began. So unless you get China, of all places, to go totally carbon negative, dismantle all of its industry, create no products, and collapse its own economy back into the 1700s with nothing more than agricultural serfdom, you're not going to solve this problem. These easy fix solutions, when the media or the UN tell the United States the sky will fall because you don't sign on to the Paris Agreement, they are totally lying to us. It is a complete lie. Why do you think Elon Musk is saying, I'm no longer going to advise the White House? It's because he wants his cut of the pie. He knows he'll be privy to some of that UN handout money because it's not actually going to go to creating a bunch of solar cells and windmills in the third world. That will never happen. They will steal 90% of that money. What's not stolen by the UN will get stolen by drug lords and warlords. They know it. I know it. Everybody else should know it. It's total dishonesty. If anthropogenic climate change exists, the solution is very simple. We need to declare worldwide martial law over the rainforest. That means the Western powers will have to get militarily involved to stop any form of logging and poaching in those regions, to let vast swaths of the Amazon and Congolese basins regrow, the island of Borneo, some of the forests in southern China, northern Thailand, these very dense rainforests and jungles. Number two, we're going to have to declare war on any nation that poisons the oceans. It's as simple as that. That's your solution. You're talking about the end of humanity as we know it, and you think that the solution is as simple as build more solar cells. I'm sorry, that's not going to do anything. If you actually think, if you are one of those people who believes climate change, number one, is real, which I grant it is. Number two is anthropogenic. I think it's a mix of that and natural causes. And number three, there's no feedback mechanism to take care of it. I disagree. I think forests in the ocean can do that quite fine if we fucking leave them alone and let them recover. Then you're talking about the end of humanity. Humanity will die. Within 1,000 years, there will be no humans left. The world will be completely deserted. It will be as deserted as Mars is today. There won't be any living things on it, other than some archaebacteria, maybe some club moss or something like that. I choose to believe that's unlikely. I choose to believe, based on historical evidence, that there have been times in the ancient past when the surface temperature of this world and the CO2 level were both very much higher than they are today. But it doesn't matter whether that's true or not, because if you think that it's a problem, you're going to have to take draconian steps. You'll need to guard the rainforests, you'll need to protect the oceans, and you may even need to sterilize several billion people. I'm not talking about genocide, I'm talking about you're going to have to drop some sort of sterilizing chemicals on the third world. There's where all your population growth is. If you think overpopulation is part of the problem, your problem's not with Europe. Europe's population's already slacked off and begun to decline. Japan, same thing. Korea, basically the same thing. US, population's barely growing when you fix for immigration. Canada, same thing. All of these areas of the world, a lot of forests are regrowing, except in Europe where population density is so high there's nowhere for forests to actually grow except between the cracks in a sidewalk or a pothole on the road. In North America, that's not a problem. Your polluters are India and China today, not Western Europe, not the United States. And asking the US to pony up billions of dollars to go build 10 fucking solar panels in Uganda, while a bunch of UN bureaucrats and warlords and private corporations siphon off all those profits, that's not going to solve climate change. It's not going to solve anything, except it's going to make them richer. And you know it to be true. That's the way bureaucracy works. It's the way government works. You trust the UN to tackle climate change. I don't. I don't think it's a great idea to let them handle anything. I think that it's just a money-making gig for them. I think they know full well that they're just kicking the can down the road. They don't really care, because if they cared, their suggestion would be the Western powers of the world should go into the third world, into the tropical jungles, and begin pushing people out of them to let them regrow. It should push people off of their land in China to protect the rivers there that flow right into the ocean that are currently so tainted with a heavy industry. That's what they would suggest. They would suggest World War III with China and the ousting of a bunch of people that are slowly chipping away at the Congolese and Amazon basins. That's what they would suggest. But they're never going to tell you that. They'd consider that bigoted. To suggest that the third world is the problem, not the developed world that already is investing in green energy, that's already increasing efficiency, where people already, they have an environmental mind, they actually care to some extent, and you have people that compost or do home gardening or something like that that actually care whether heavy industry is in their backyard. People over there, they don't care whether heavy industry goes up, they love it, because then they can make a little bit more money. They still get screwed, and the UN allows them to be screwed. The UN doesn't care if millions of Chinese lower classers, get lung cancer because of a bunch of industry in China. They don't care if China pollutes the ocean or poaches trees or whatever the Chinese want to do, because it's China. It's not the US or Western Europe. They don't care. There's your solution to climate change. That's about all. Peace out.